Throughout the 1900s, we see some of the biggest global shifts ever seen in a single century. For one example, in America, post-World War II, we see the West's new leading power have a massive cultural shift, as the baby boomers who started to control popular culture usurped the influence of the silent generation. One of these cultural examples was comic books, particularly superhero comics. The silent generation had heroes like the Phantom and Superman during the 30s, who helped inspire during a time that is remembered for great struggle and strife globally during the Great Depression. Also, during the Second World War, the silent generation had heroes like Captain America, who had stories of triumphs over evil Germans. But as the baby boomers were born and grew up, many things culturally changed. The boomers were the generation to have the threat of the Cold War going nuclear hang over their heads, so they naturally began to seek more pleasure and enjoyment from their lives while they still could. Meanwhile, their parents, the silent generation, supported traditional values, determination, and work ethic. The boomers became more liberal and expressive. Because of this, music, television, film, clothes, and even cars began to change drastically. However, comic book heroes and their messages mostly stayed the same. As American generations, culture, politics, and history changed over the years, the role of superhero comics has stayed the same. That role, regardless of the cultural period, is to be a sign of hope and inspiration, to be an escape from reality, and to have characters that are a good influence on readers, particularly the youth. As time progressed, the way these stories were told also changed, as well as the social climate these stories were told in. Yet, these messages remained, despite the opening of storytelling frontiers and the change in cultural dynamics. To start with the story of the comic book, we of course must start with the first comic books and strips. Enjoyment of comics themselves started in the 30s, just before World War II, and continued all the way up to the 70s, when the medium for delivering these stories began to change immensely. There are three distinct time periods for the long reign of the comic book, these being the early golden age of the 30s, the later golden age of the 40s and 50s, and the silver age of the 60s and 70s. The 30s to the 70s saw the greatest cultural shift in the Western world, and yet comics stayed the same. If we start in the very beginning, we find the Phantom, created in February of 1936 by Lee Falk. The Phantom adorned a purple suit with a black mask covering his eyes. Interestingly enough, the Phantom has no powers. He relies on his strength and intelligence to thwart villains. His most important strength, though, is the myth of his immortality. The idea that the Phantom was immortal often scared villains. In reality, the Phantom is not immortal. The role of the Phantom is actually passed on through the generations of crime fighters, who each take turns as the masked hero. This idea of privacy and keeping a secret being your best trait is indicative of the people who were reading at the time, being the silent generation, because they believed that taking risks and expressing yourself too much would lead to trouble. 2 years later, we are introduced to Superman, the first hero to have out-of-this-world powers. He could fly, shoot laser beams out of his eyes, he had super strength, the list goes on. From his proud S on his chest to his majestic red cape and blue uniform, Superman became instantly recognizable, and he still is today. In the late 30s, depression was still in full show, and for many marginalized and voiceless, Superman became a symbol for justice and hope. This popular hero would next have to deal with World War II, and he served the role again, providing hope to many as they took on the cynical powers of the time. But another hero was also popular at this time, who took on a similar role of fighting the evil. He is Captain America, created in March of 1941 by Joe Simon and Jack Kirby. The Star-Spangled Hero rose to fame and importance during the war, becoming the most popular hero of the time. Him and Superman, along with other famous heroes like The Flash and Batman, carried the superhero genre from the pre-war golden age to the late golden age. Though, the popular comics would face their biggest foe yet in 1954. The heroes defeated Nazis, aliens, and underwater threats. Yet a book titled Seduction of the Innocent by Dr. Frederick Werdum would change the course of comic book superheroes development. In this book, Dr. Werdum accused all comics of promoting disregard for authority and delinquency. Werdum started a movement, and parents and local officials alike stood with him to hold comics to a higher standard. Leading up to this book, comics began exploring mature themes. Some comics questioned the intentions of institutions like police departments, courts, and government bodies. Others questioned religion or roles of women and people of color in an oppressed society. Yet, the comic book code put an end to such ideas being spread. This code stayed in order until 2001, and the comics from this half of a century had to be extremely careful. This half a century after the Werdum movement and the end of the Golden Era is known as the Silver Era. The most famous of these heroes made in this era is Spider-Man, created by Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. The world-famous web-slinger took off in popularity. Spider-Man is a symbol for doing things that are right, even if logically it may not make sense. The gut feeling to do the right thing is explored with his spidey sense, a feeling that tells Spider-Man when he or someone else is in danger, or when he needs to do something. Following these instincts leads Spider-Man to do the right thing for his community. Spider-Man had the benefit to burst on the scene in a different way to all the aforementioned heroes. He could appear on television. Though Superman and Captain America would as well, Spider-Man brought something fresh and new to the scene. Also, at this time, most of the readers and watchers were from Generation X, a group of resourceful and independent thinkers who maintained a good work-life balance. Gen Xers who grew up watching Spidey and other heroes on the TV went on to be the ones who created massive films for themselves, as well as Generation Z. The first movie with a recognized comic book superhero in it was Sam Raimi's Spider-Man film, simply named Spider-Man. The movie did well, leading to 2 sequels, as well as the Marvel Iron Man movie, which led to the creation of the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
In today's world, superheroes are the stars of the world and are admired by everyone for their super strength, mesmerizing moves, and fight against villains. As said in the Backseat Superheroes, superheroes are meant to inspire. They represent someone we are not, or someone that can do things that we can't. They can provide an escape into a world where someone is there for us when our protectors or medical and social institutions have let us down. Anger and sadness are commonplace emotions felt through our society because of the regular injustices we see or even experience ourselves. Unjust murders because of racial tensions and prejudices. Government's inability or flat-out refusal to act. Betrayal by those we loved or considered friends. Our world is full of struggles that seem to find you no matter your background or social status. Superheroes don't target one specific group of people. They represent everyone, and that is why they make such a big impact. In a world of hate, superheroes are there to lift people's spirits and hope during hard times of life. It is an escape from reality, something that we can dream to be that can only give us hope for the future. One heartwarming way we see this is through the way superheroes have an effect on kids. Every kid's dream is to be their favorite superhero, which is an exciting dream because they get to idolize a being who is out of this world. He can do stunts they can only hope for. Superheroes have contributed a ginormous amount when it comes to community service. There are countless videos on the internet of superheroes going into the community, mainly hospital, to visit sick kids to give them hope. These sick kids grew up idolizing these beings, and when tragedy struck for most of them, superheroes were their escape from what they were dealing with to keep them strong and believe they can get through everything. There is even a National Superheroes Day, April 20th, which celebrates real and fictional superheroes in our world and what they have done for the community. Lastly, Comic-Con, and the crazy numbers these events bring in for superhero friends to come together and enjoy each other's presence all across the world. There are over 100 of these events, and they bring people together to celebrate this amazing frontier and what it has done for people. Needless to say, superheroes have influenced our world in a big way to this day. From starting as silent entertainment with the introduction of superhero comics to superhero movies hitting billions of dollars in the box office, superheroes have made great strides and continue to grow in our entire world today. The sky's the limit for superheroes and where they can go. Thank you.